Okay. Hi, Carmen.
Hi, Rebecca.
I'm really happy to be speaking with you today as a part of honoring your remarkable career. And I'd like to start off by asking you to reflect a bit about some of the different aspects of your career. So throughout your career, you've made some pretty incredible contributions to our field as a researcher, as a clinician, and as a teacher and mentor of future researchers and clinicians, and often all of those at the same time. So I wonder if you can reflect a little bit on how those three pillars of your work have influenced one another.
Well, I have been an audiologist for a long time, and the first half of my career was primarily as a clinician administrator with some teaching on the side. But I do have to say the clinician part of my career, I think, really gave me an opportunity to see the impact of what we do as audiologists has on patients and on their family members, and some insights that you learn about things in the classroom. You learn how to the mechanics of audiology, and you know what you're doing, but to get that insight of how the patient's feeling and what's important to them is really critical to guiding research in the end. So the clinical part gave me the skills, but really gave me an opportunity to experience firsthand patient feedback and
Mhm.
to hear their stories. The um, teaching part of my career was the next big part, and I started teaching at Gallaudet University, and I was asked to teach a pediatric audiology class. I did not see children as where I was working at the time, which was Washington Hospital Center. It was not licensed as a pediatric hospital.
Mm.
And I was totally fearful of teaching the class and wondered why they even asked me to do it. But the department chairman at the time, a guy named Steve Lauderman, said, "You know more than the students do about the topic. Before you walk in the door, you can do it." And it actually was a great thing for me to do because it made me learn more or refresh what I had learned. And I think that story is true throughout my teaching career. I I learn as I'm teaching the students, and they help me to stay up to date. And so topics that I wasn't teaching, I would still get a little bit from the students. I think they were inspirational to me quite often. So I have the patients inspiring me, and then the students inspiring me to stay current, and not only current in audiology topics, but in the lingo of things, and computer current. And um, it really was rewarding. I have had some classes that I'm still in touch with most of the students in the class, or that just really they give back, and the more the students gave, the more I felt good about what I was doing, and it can be such a rewarding part of a career. Then the research part of my career began about 21 years ago. I was working at Washington Hospital Center, as I said before, as a clinician administrator, and had the opportunity to go to the National Institutes of Health, specifically the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders, to head up their audiology unit. Now, their audiology unit at the time was just two people, me and one other clinician, Chris Zalewski, who's also still there. It was largely a clinical service. And in the time that I was, and they hadn't had a student rotate there for
Mm.
years and years. In the time that I was there, we expanded to 4 full-time audiologists, which is still a small service, but we also changed our image from being a clinical service provider to being a research colleagues, and to initiating some of our own research protocols. It I brought in students, and by the time I left the NIH, so I had a 20-year career there, We had over 100 students rotate through either for clinical rotations. We had a few postdocs, several doctoral students do their dissertations with us, and medical students. So it was a real variety. Again, strengthening my knowledge just by working with them and the reward of seeing students succeed. So I'm going to give a little shout out to some of the students that I've maybe influenced positively in some way. So I mentioned Chris Zalewski, whose dissertation I was the, oh no, this is terrible. I was at the NIH. I was the lead on his dissertation, um, and he's gone on to have quite a significant career in the vestibular system. Then Kelly King, who came to the NIH to be a research assistant on a very part-time basis, was working on an AUD, and by the time she left, she switched to PhD and worked with me as a clinician colleague for years, and then did her dissertation at the NIH. Also co-taught a class with me at University of Maryland. And so you can see that Kelly, using Kelly as the example, she came in as a research assistant. She then was a student clinician. She was also in the class that I was teaching at the University of Maryland at the time. She then co-taught the class with me and became a researcher in her own right. So that sort of blends the three pillars. I'm also going to give a shout out to Sam Kleindienst, who I didn't do any supervision of research with her, but she was a student who rotated with us, who was just really outstanding and who I still keep in touch with. And then, of course, there's Rebecca Bieber, who rotated. You did an internship. You did a semester-long internship. You were in my medical audiology class, and then you did a year-long period of time with us and conducted. Not only completed your clinical rotation for your AUD, but you participated in some research studies, and you were first author on one article and maybe a co-author on another article. And then you co-taught medical audiology with me. So we have a real blend of everything. And look how well you're doing. Maybe I had a small part in it.
More than a small part, I would say.
And the other thing is, you mentioned these as pillars, but I don't think of them as pillars in the way of a silo where you're a clinician or you're a researcher or you're a mentor or teacher. I think of them as something that for me has blended so well, and they each reinforce and intertwine.
That's really nice to hear. I think you're absolutely right about them intertwining rather than standing on their own, separate from one another.
Mhm.
So you've been in research audiology for over 20 years, it sounds like. Can you reflect on how the field of research audiology has changed since you completed your PhD training?
Sure. So I have been a full-time research audiologist for 20 years. But prior to that, as I said, I was a clinical audiologist, but I had a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So when I earned my master's degree in audiology, there was no AUD, and I wanted something more. So my choice was to get a PhD. And for some people, the PhD led them into the career path of running a large hospital program. And it wasn't as strongly researched as the PhD is really designed to be. Um, Especially where I was working, I didn't get a grant where I was working. And I really didn't get heavily into research until I came to the National Institutes of Health. At the Washington Hospital Center, I did get to participate in some research, but it was on the light side. At the National Institutes of Health, I came in to work with colleagues who were geneticists and biologists and engineers and had all kinds of different backgrounds. I think that the research career for the audiologist in this setting was one in which collaboration was a key element. So the ability to collaborate with people at the NIH helped to grow my career and taught me a lot about the importance of collaboration as a key element of research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, collaboration is very important.
And now, audiologists have the option of the AUD, which
Mhm.
is a clinical degree. Some go on to get the AUD and the PhD. And I want to say that with an AUD, you can still do research, and there's nothing to prevent that um, in the right setting and with the right desire.
Absolutely. Can you share some advice for new researchers, like a do or do not for someone early in their career?
Sure. I think the most important thing is to understand that you're not in this solo, that there are other people that have similar interests to yours or people that have tangential interests that can actually help you to push your career forward. So I say make friends in audiology, take advantage in a good way of your colleagues and relationships, and understand that your career, while it is your career, you don't have to do it on your own in audiology. It's not just you in a room doing the research, it's you building a team. And the team building um, in your lab or in your setting um, is great, but you should also make sure that you expand these relationships beyond your place of employment or even your own locale, but interact and take advantage of how easy it is to interact with colleagues around the country and the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that leads me very nicely into my next question for you. Speaking of developing friendships and relationships with colleagues around the world, what impact has AAS and the AAS conference had on the trajectory of your career?
Well, the AAS conference, or AA and AAS in general, is my place. I consider myself a translational researcher, and that's the clinical and the research blend, where what you're doing is translating to the human, and it's not bench research fully. And this is the home for the translational research in audiology and hearing science. The organization is devoted to promoting research, to promoting mentorships. It's not focused on some of the political side of things. That's for other organizations to do. AAS is your research home, and at the meeting, the meeting is small compared to some of the other professional meetings we can attend. And you can really talk to anybody there at this meeting. The poster sessions are active and interactive. You can meet anyone. And in fact, the first AAS that I went to in years, it used to be tagged on to other meetings and it wasn't its own standalone meeting. So the first one that I went to that was an AAS meeting on its own, um, Kelly King, who was a student at the time, presented a poster. And I remember Jim Jerger coming up to her as she was at her poster, talking to her about it and telling her that it was good work. And I thought, where else can you get this kind of interaction with the leaders in our field who are truly, truly interested in what you're doing and not just passing through? I also find that I learn a lot at AAS from the talks that I go to and the posters, and learn a lot that I can apply to what I'm doing or learn about who else has similar interests, who can help me solve a problem. So I find it, as I said, it's my home, and I've been able to make friends and uh, take advantage of its many offerings.
Absolutely. Can you share a memorable or a fun event from your career, AAS related or otherwise?
Well, when I first came to the NIH, one of the projects that had just germinated there was to take a look at the influence of heredity on auditory processing. And we were a team of two geneticists, an ENT, and two audiologists and we went to a convention called the Annual Twins Day Festival. And the attendees were both monozygotic and dizygotic twins. And they were really into their twinness. They would wear matching outfits. They would plan for months in advance on what they would wear each day. And it wasn't just like the outfit match, but the shoes match, the nail color match, if they had their nails done, their hats match. Anyway, that part was a lot of fun. But what we did was to recruit students from nearby universities in the DC area. So we had students from University of Maryland and Gallaudet come with us to help us get this auditory processing event set up. And we were in some outdoor tents, and then we were lucky enough to be able to get a quiet building on the premises, but we had to set up little booths and have very efficient testing materials ready. And it was a lot of teamwork. And just from the moment we would we had some vans that we drove from DC to Twinsburg, Ohio. And from the moment we got in the vans with the students and our colleagues, we just had fun telling stories and laughing the whole way there about various things. And then we would work really hard. At the end of the day, we would go out to the local Mexican restaurant, and maybe somebody would end up with a sombrero on and a margarita or two, and then be back working hard the next day. And it was really, for me, that 3-day period that occurred over 7 years was something I look forward to all year. It was just so much fun for us, for the students, the satisfaction of just working really hard but making it fun for everybody.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Also a nice blend of research and mentorship and clinic as well.
Mhm,
Well,
definitely.
my last question for you is about not about audiology, or maybe it is, and I'm curious how you like to spend your time when you're not working.
Well, technically, I'm not working right now. I retired from my position at NIH a year ago, but warning, warning, I still work in the sense that I'm still involved in some research projects. So part of my time is still working with some colleagues on some select research projects. I don't set an alarm, so I sleep a little more. But what activities do I do? I travel. I love to travel. So I'm in California right now visiting my friends who are also audiologists, and then I'll visit my daughter in a little bit. Um, I went to Italy this year with two audiologists, Linda Hood and Brenda Riles, and we spent 10 days in Florence in a culture, culinary, and art tour. And then I later was joined by my husband and brother. So travel, and I'm a cook. So this is an opportunity for me to delve into that a little bit more. I I like to walk, so walking or hiking.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for answering these questions for me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at AAS.
Thank you, Rebecca.